We flew to LA this morning and we did what every self-respecting East Coaster would do. As soon as we landed and got our luggage, we went to In-N-Out Burger. And then we came over here to visit my friend Steve Beck, who I haven't seen in a couple of years.
Yeah, it's been a while.
It's been a while. Who's a certified car geek, absolutely. And he's got a shop in Los Angeles, and all these cool cars are in here. But we're here to see, for this episode, one car in particular. Join me as I show you what's one of the most significant Cobras in the world. In the early 1960s, a young jazz pianist, plying away at the trade that he wanted to pursue so long, being a jazz musician, and make a living at it. And he came out with a song called Watermelon Man. It was an instrumental. He started to make money at that. The young musician, Herbie Hancock, you may have heard of him. Watermelon Man gave him his first royalties, a few $1,000s. So he said, I'm gonna go buy myself a station wagon so I can put my band in there. And his roommate, Donald Byrd, they lived up in the Bronx at the time. No, you don't want to buy a station wagon. You want to buy a Cobra. Herbie said, what's a Cobra? Oh man, it's a brand new car. Carroll Shelby's building it and he's kicking Ferrari's ass. Huh, that must be a pretty good car. So the next day he got in the subway and took it down to Manhattan, where there's a dealership on Park Avenue called Chrysler Motors. Now it's Chrysler with a K, has nothing to do with Chrysler. And he walked in the dealership, and just imagine this. This is during the civil rights era. And a young black man walks into a dealership, and the salesman was reading the newspaper. And a young black man comes into the dealership. He continues reading the newspaper. So Herbie walks over to his desk. Excuse me, sir. Sir? Excuse me. Puts the newspaper down. Yeah? I heard you have a Cobra here. I'd like to take a look at it. It's over there. And he starts reading the paper again. So Herbie walks over to a Cobra. He didn't know anything about cars. He said, my father always told me when you're looking at a car, kick the tires. So I kicked the tires. I looked around at it. It looked like a nice little car. He said, excuse me, sir, can you give me answer some questions for me? And the guy just ignored him. So he just leaned on the horn button. Just leaned on the horn button. Ultimately, the salesman came over. And Herbie admits that if he had not been so rude to me, I probably wouldn't have bought the car. I probably would have bought the station wagon. He said, I'd like to buy this car. And I said, you can't afford this car. So Herbie took money out of his pocket. He said, here's a down payment. I'll be back tomorrow with the rest. And the next day, Herbie came back. Well, in the meantime, the dealership principals had done some research and found out that this guy Herbie was like the real deal. You know, played with Miles Davis and, he was making songs that were reaching the jazz charts. And so when he came back, he was treated somewhat like a celebrity. Now, he mentioned to me that this is about 6 months before Martin Luther King gave that famous speech, I Have a Dream. It was a tough world. He left with this car. Now, he didn't know how to drive a stick, so his friend had to come with him. And so Herbie, every day after he'd make his appointments in New York City, go to the recording studio, whatever, would practice driving the car forward, backward, just getting the clutch going, just getting the clutch moving back and forth. Ultimately, he got enough courage to go out and drive the car. He's owned this car since then. This is the 6th Cobra ever built. This car was actually so early that Carroll Shelby never built this car. When Carroll Shelby proposed the Cobra to Ford Motor Company in AC, he didn't have a shop yet. He got the deal, didn't get the shop. So he asked a friend of his, Ed Hugus, who had a sports car shop in Pittsburgh, hey, can you help me, Ed? Build some Cobras for me until I get up and running? He said, sure. So this is called CSX 2006. Now, Carroll Shelby owned the very first Cobra, CSX 2000. That was the prototype that he maintained ownership with his entire life. This is the 6th Cobra built. It was Herbie's everyday wheels. I mean, far from a station wagon he could put his band in, but he would drive this car to gigs in Chicago, in Boston, all over New York. He has funny stories about drag racing Miles Davis. Miles had a Ferrari, so they get to a traffic light and they drag raced up Manhattan at 3 in the morning, and Herbie blew Miles' doors off. Miles told Herbie, you got to get rid of that car. You're going to get killed. Well, he didn't get rid of it. And Herbie now, in his 80s, is the longest original owner of a Cobra in the world. I've done a couple of stories for magazines about Herbie Hancock and this Cobra, for Road and Track, for Hagerty magazine. And I actually had a chance to meet Herbie when he performed in Charlotte at the Neighborhood Theater. Oh God, probably 20 years ago or more. It was a bitchin' show. He's like just amazing. And so I go to the stage door afterwards, and somebody's there watching the door. I said, can I meet Mr. Hancock? He said, no, he's not seeing anybody tonight. And I said, I want to talk to him about his Cobra. So he goes in, and the door opens up, and it's Herbie. You want to talk about Cobras? Come on in. And so my son Brian and I got to meet Herbie Hancock backstage. It was just totally cool. Recently, if you remember, there was an episode we did at the Detroit Historical Society's warehouse. Featured bubble cars, like all these bubble cars in the warehouse. And if you remember, one of the Cobras there, the dark red one, which was rebodied, it was a rebodied Cobra. So it came like this from the factory, and they rebodied it into something that was a show car. It was the Boronat Cobra. That was CSX 2008. This is CSX 2006. What's the chance of that? They both were built by the same shop in Pittsburgh, even before Carroll Shelby had a shop, by Ed Hugus. And we should see two of the oldest Cobras in the world just within a few weeks of each other. Just an amazing coincidence. If you like these videos, you really should check out the Hagerty Drivers Club. You get 24/7 roadside assistance with flatbed towing, subscription to an award-winning magazine, and more. Sign up today. The link is in the description below. Tell us some of the things that are different on this car than...
This car is so early in production that it's still very British. I mean, the heritage of this car was AC Bristol, and the whole car was redesigned to accommodate Shelby's dream of an American V8 in this car. So everybody thinks the AC Bristol just got a big engine. No, the whole car was redesigned to accommodate all the power and torque. It's a bigger car, it's wider, it's a little longer, different wheelbase. Hugus just put them together with whatever they could find. And I don't know if all they had this engine shipped without a manifold on it, and they put a 2-barrel on it with, that's the only one. But allegedly, I heard that these Ford Advanced Vehicle 260 solid lifter engines were left over from the Falcon Safari campaign. Shelby wanted them back. He offered for a nominal fee that he would retrofit your 260 Cobra with the then new 289, because Ford wanted the engines back for their archives or whatever. That never happened to this car. This car still has all the numbers on it. Wow. You know, and some of the numbers are 221 casting numbers in the block. So it's a very early in the. So
221 was the first narrow V8 that Ford built.
First of the Windsors.
You know, they had 390s and 352s and Y blocks, but there were huge, heavy engines. This was the first. Well, the second generation of the small engine. 221 cubic inch was the first, and that was only available in Fairlanes.
Yeah, you only saw it in Fairlanes. This was the generation of the light, thin wall casting block. Mm-hmm.
That's a really early...
The profile badge. First 72 cars got that. This one was
72 cars.
First 72. Right. This car was in a fender bender when it was new, or relatively new, and that was lost. And luckily, I found one on eBay, of all things. First thing I ever bought on eBay, I bought for Herbie Hancock.
For his birthday, right?
Gave it to him for his 60th birthday, and there was a big, celebration at his home, and there's a lot of luminaries, including politicians that later became president. And I was shaking everybody's hand and doing the whole thing, and they're looking at me confused, like, this guy's no celebrity. Herbie goes, "Yeah, it's my mechanic," telling everybody. At any rate, when he opened up the package, the only one smiling in the room was him, because he knew what it was. The rest of them were like, "It's some car part, who cares?" But he was thrilled and handed it back to me and said, "Put it on, man." But he's a tremendous guy, very unaffected by his success, and I think he may be the only original owner left, as well as being the longest owner. Yeah, because we just lost Hank Williams,
sure,
who had bought his car in '64.
Well, the number's getting small.
And he was 92 when he passed.
So one thing I noticed is that most Cobras have a big lever you turn, one on each side. You turn them this way to open the hood and turn it this way to lock it. But this has like a magic key you have to use.
Yep.
And this you would keep in the glove box or the door pocket, and you put it in there and you turn it like that, and then that would unlock the hood. So let's open this hood and see what's different about it. All right, so start pointing out some differences here.
Obviously, it's no show car under here. It's kind of as I got it, only the wiring has been repaired. The hydraulics are in different locations, slightly different. The windshield washer bottle, that's all different. This is a generator car. So that's over here, and it's not a Ford generator. It's a Lucas part.
No.
With a tack drive off of it.
Because of the positive ground.
It's a positive ground car. This is very British.
Mm-hmm.
It has a remote starter over here. very low battery won't spin the engine right now.
Yep.
It does have the factory dual point distributor in it with the vacuum advance blocked off. And very early, it's probably got a little oiler on it over here somewhere.
Oh, yeah.
Very early.
And I've not seen the fuel filter.
The remote fuel filter, yeah. And it also has an unusual fuel pump that I've rebuilt twice. That a standard fuel pump won't fit on it. It's an odd type.
So this is the bottle. Plastics weren't used as much as glass was in early cars, and so this is a glass bottle with a windshield washer fluid went. And you can see a traditional steering box as opposed to a steering rack.
On a rack and pinion car, this whole front section is completely different. It's a center pull steering where the rod goes down here to a forked, kind of a pitman arm affair that actually has the tie rods going to it.
And so is this a custom-made radiator?
That is a hand-fabricated radiator that was made for this car, and every one of these early cars I've seen has a different radiator in it.
No kidding. So these are the headers you talk about, Ballinger
The Ballinger headers, yeah.
So this had one master cylinder for both front and rear brakes, I guess?
Yeah, and the clutch hydraulics down there, so and that's very different than the later Cobras too.
Right. And can we take this off?
Sure. 2-barrel.
And the famous 2-barrel carburetor. So it would have come with an Autolite 4100
right.
probably.
Which are very hard to come by now. Herbie has told me that he has a 4-barrel manifold and carburetor for it that he got from Shelby.
What kind of horsepower do you think that had?
I think they're about 245, a solid lifter. They were, they were.
Solid lifter engine?
Yeah, it's a solid lifter engine, yep. And it obviously has the old-fashioned style turn indicators.
This is the indicator right here. So you turn the wheel, this all stays stationary. So as opposed to later Cobras, which had Stewart Warden gauges, it's got Smith's gauges. I mean, if you look at this, has got to be like, there can't be many of these in the world. The key fob, Los Angeles Shelby American Automobile Club. I mean, that is one old item.
We started in 91.
Herbie H.
That's when I met Herbie in 91. Dig around back here and it's got a few more buttons than they actually came with. But in the back here, I can pull that up. It's the original pouch.
Oh, see, so I guess only the early cars had that pouch. Look at that. So the pouch snapped to the back, and that contained the side curtains that would go in these slots. You know, you don't have to take it out. It's, it's a lot of work. So I see it's got 30,000 something miles on it. Do you think that's 130 or?
Yeah, he drove this thing a lot. I mean, the pedals are worn smooth, where they say AC on them.
Oh, look at that. They're metal. Oh, this is definitely 130,000 miles. Wow. So, Steve, tell me about what are you going to do with this car? What's Herbie going to do with this car? I know you're like his pal and you're storing it for him.
For a while, he was thinking about selling it. And the money doesn't really mean that much to him. He's okay that way, but he has since had a grandson. And this is going to be his grandson's car.
Isn't that something? Which
I think is really awesome. Hopefully that this kind of car can be operated on the road when he's old enough to drive. But you and I probably won't be around to see that. So right. Maybe you, not me. For years he talked about selling it. What do you think it's worth? Who can we get to appraise it? I'll go, Herbie, because it's yours and because of what it is, it's worth as much or more than a lot of the rarest cars in the world. You know, it's got a great unbroken chain of ownership and a great history. Name your price, depends how hard somebody wants it.
I can't tell you how much this means to be able to see and touch this car, thanks to Steve and thanks to Herbie for allowing us to come here and do this. I mean, whether you're a Chevy guy or a Porsche guy, Mopar guy, it doesn't matter. A Cobra to everybody is a special car. To see one in your lifetime that's real is rare because there are only 998 real Cobras if you talk about the small blocks and the big blocks. And there are about 60,000 replicas. So most people who see a Cobra have seen a replica. So we've taken one of the most desirable cars on the planet for enthusiasts and came down to the 6th one ever built, owned by the original owner, who happens just to be a multi-Grammy winning jazz pianist, Herbie Hancock. What a special day. Steve, thanks so much.
Thanks for coming.
This is a good one.
Yeah, it's truly a piece of history, isn't it?
It's wonderful. Happy hunting.
He chooses not to have it driven or operated much anymore. It's a little risky for it, and it's his call. When he needs it, I'll get it.
I've done a number of stories about Herbie and this car. And one funny story, this car was getting old, and it's probably time to get something new, but he wasn't going to get rid of this. So he bought a Ferrari and drove it home. And then he said he sat in the garage and talked to this car. And he said, look, man, I'm not getting rid of you. You're my Cobra. I'm going to have you my whole life. But you know, I'm going to use this Ferrari so I can save you in this good condition. But he went to a Ferrari meet in Beverly Hills. He was invited. The press found out that Herbie Hancock was a car guy. So the press invited him. They were going to meet him there at the Ferrari meet. And you know, he was late.
Always.
Why was he late? Because, well, the Ferrari wouldn't start. So he goes driving up in this Cobra, and the journalists are all saying, where's your Ferrari? He said it wouldn't start, so I jumped in the Cobra and drove that over. So
I had just gotten the Cobra back together and left it over there for him. Yeah. So.
Jeez.